everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rare Book Cafe, the coffee break edition. Hello, my co-host Linn,
Good morning,
and our
Ed.
and our special guest author Larry Baker. Lee, I moved over to tea this week
Oh, did
because
you?
neither Panera nor Starbucks or anybody is sponsoring the show yet, so I'm boycotting coffee
No,
this week in favor of tea.
no one has paid a bit of attention to us as far as that goes.
But I
I
have
have,
noticed that the number of people following us on Instagram is well over 300 now.
that's a big improvement. That
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And
And
I
to find
actually had people ask me last week why there was no new segment.
nice, people are looking for us.
Oh.
All right. Hey, you know when you took your grandchildren to the science museum and they had the Van de Graaff machine and you put your hands on it and your hair stood up?
You brought it home with you, I see.
That's the background I've got going
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Larry, you are looking good. The White Knight. You kind of look like Gandalf.
I look like I've been out hunting with Dick Cheney is what I look like.
Did you get shot?
Yeah, all over my face. It's like, you don't want to get too close.
Larry, I've been seeing your new book everywhere, at least everywhere on social media, Instagram, Facebook, advertisement. You've been hitting the road.
I have done a couple of tours so far. I went to Oklahoma, where the story is set. I went down to the Oklahoma City and had a good crowd down there. The big things are coming up. I'm coming to Florida in the fall.
Oh, great.
Oh, good.
Coming to St. Augustine, Jacksonville in September. And then in November, the Miami Book Festival, International Book Festival, has invited me to do an in-person event down there, that's a big deal. I'm
Yeah.
very honored to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure the producer of our show, T. Allen Smith, will be there and welcome you appropriately
I would assume so.
with a sundowner drink. So I understand your new book is out. Tell us about it. I'm going to turn this over to Lee because I understand, Lee, you have finished it already. I have
yes.
not.
I have finished it, and I am, in fact, I think I've read all of Larry's books. I'm glad to report.
My target audience.
Yes, thanks to the fact that he keeps sending them to me. That helps.
My
That
target
helps.
audience.
And I think that it was helpful that I had read some of the others, because we have one recurring character at any rate in
That's right.
in your books. Yes, we do. I will have
You
to.
know better than him.
Yeah, I do. I've paid attention to this. It was a fascinating cast of characters. And recently on Facebook, something popped up that was about Mark Twain and John Lewis, not George's John Lewis, but your John Lewis in the book. And I was going to send it to you, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But there was an article about John Lewis and Mark Twain.
Alan, bring up the book for us. I have a question.
Well, I have it here. There we go.
There we go.
That's a good looking book.
Yes, it is.
My question is the panoply of American icons, whatever culture, politics, literary, is so vast. How did you pick these characters to be in this book, or did they pick you?
Oh, no. This is, I started out with the Harry Chapin song Taxi. And I took that plot, boy meets girl, loses girl, gets girl back over a 40-year period. I thought that's a great story. So I start with that premise, and then it's like, okay, what else can I use here to make it different? Well, I go back to my theater experience. I used to run the Center Theater in Oklahoma City back before, about the time y'all were born.
Not me.
I put it in a theater where all of a sudden, why not do a ghost story? And if you're going to do a ghost story in a movie theater, you have the complete cast of characters from the last 150 years of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Now, as Lee knows very well, I have an unhealthy fascination with Marilyn Monroe. So obviously, I've got to have her ghost, but I want to make her different than all the other versions of Marilyn Monroe that have been out there in the last few years, which I find offensive. Just condescending, offensive versions of her as human being. So I'll start with that, and then, well, I've got to have a villain, and the perfect villain for a ghost story is Harry Houdini, because in real life he didn't believe in ghosts. He tried to debunk the seance crowd and the spiritual crowd. So let's make him a ghost and put him in this theater, and he doesn't even believe he's a ghost.
Sweet revenge.
The others, he's not a ghost. And then the other people, Harry Chapin's got to be a ghost. Will Rogers, it's an Oklahoma book. And Mark Twain, one of my favorite literary heroes, who in his own way became very cynical in his old age. So I took all these characters, put them in a love story, and then as soon as I added the Marilyn Monroe character, she really takes over the book in the second half of the book. She becomes a much more interesting character in depth than I think the public saw her in life.
She becomes in the book, I don't want to call her a mother figure, but she takes care of people, or tries to.
A fixer.
Right. That's a better term.
Y'all ever watch the television series Suits?
Yes.
Think of her as the Donna character.
Right. Right.
Which is somebody who seems to intuit other people's feelings, and she's a problem solver. And in my story, she's also a person with a tragic past, but she's not cynical. She's just resigned to it. But she's funny. She's a matchmaker. She's a cook. She's a magician. And she's a philosopher. I mean, one of the most profound moments for me in that book was the last few pages when her and Mark Twain explained to the narrator what the meaning of life is. And the narrator is confused by some earlier events in the story. And Marilyn and Mark Twain basically says, you're looking for order and rationality and depth that doesn't exist in life. This is the world that we're in now. Don't try to understand it.
I knew that you had managed the theater. Are any of these, I mean, I know the film characters could have been in any theater. Are any of the ones who would have appeared in person actually appeared in that theater?
You know what?
Or I didn't know if you had access to the records or anything like that.
I did. About half of the people in the book that I mentioned by name actually appeared in the theater.
Okay. Right.
Harry Chapin appeared across the street from that theater, another theater. There's a Mac Duncan character, the projectionist character. That was my best friend. And he and I we ran the theater together.
Yeah.
Bob Leonard and Horace Barker, friends of mine in Iowa, making barbershop quartet. Janine Eyre, Sister Janine and Father Bill. And if you notice the pictures in the back,
Yeah.
those are real people. That's a nun and a priest who fell in love
Yeah.
and got married. But they were connected to the Harry Chapin hunger drive. And they're friends of mine now. And they were gracious enough to let me include them as ghosts in the book. And of course, my favorite character, Harry Ducharme, the talk show host, radio talk show host. Who, you remember in the back of the book with a cast of characters.
There's no picture of him.
This gets a little blank frame
Right.
here because he doesn't exist except as a voice. So
Right.
nobody knows what he looks like.
Right.
So there's a lot to choose from. And back in the old days in the theater, I swore I saw ghosts in that theater. It might have been the drugs I was taking at the time.
You think so? Could have
In
been.
fact, I once did a television interview about 3 weeks ago about this very thing, and they bleeped out the word drugs. I couldn't say that on television. You know, there are no rules here, so I could
Right. Yeah.
whatever, take my clothes
Say whatever you like. Well,
Yeah.
you were explaining towards the end of the book there was a discussion between Mark Twain and Marilyn Monroe, which is quite fantastical. And they don't just live for the day. I mean, it's a philosophy there, but it kind of belittles philosophy. It kind of belittles religion. It boils it all down to incidentalism. Hey, c'est la vie, live hard, die young, and have a good-looking corpse.
I wouldn't simplify that much.
Okay.
It's basically, you do have to live in the moment, even when you're dead. That you've got eternity ahead of you. If you are going to stress out about meanings and understanding the purpose of all this, you are going to go crazy. And so that's the thing that Harry Houdini doesn't understand. He's trying to rationally educate these people, and these people understand the screen is the big symbol. Sort of like, that's the screen. It's a dividing line. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. And as soon as he touches it, something happens to him. The other characters know that's the limit. You're on this side. Don't worry about the other side.
And which, in terms of the theater layout, which side of the screen are they on? They're on the audience side, or are they behind the screen?
Oh, they're on the audience side.
Okay, that's what it sounded like, but then I
Yeah.
started wondering about that.
One of the pictures in the back of the book is of the actual Center Theater stage. Giant old stage, which they used to do live, dance
Right.
routines, big bands, everything there. So that's where this all takes place. And the apartment that Harry gets used to be my office in that theater.
I bet it didn't look as nice as it did after they fixed it up for Harry.
No.
Larry, I want to hijack the conversation a little bit. We'll finish up with your book in a moment. But since we have access to you, I mean, you are a much bigger thinker. And a couple of things I want to bring out. Are you a member of the Authors Guild? What is it? The Literary Guild of America? Well, where I'm going with this, I want to hear your comments, because in the book world, nothing happens until an author puts pen to paper. The author is where it starts. And right now we have a serious strike going on out in California where other authors, not of books perhaps, but of screens, are fighting for their rights. I would like to hear your comments and thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I'm a bleeding heart liberal, so I'm a strong believer in sort of unionization and sort of solidarity. I don't know enough about the specifics of contracts, but it's pretty clear that writers are being cut out of the residual returns on their work. And that's where a lot of the money is made.
Mm-hmm.
And producers are just simply saying, we're going to pay you for this product at this venue only. Now, once we do something else with it, you're not involved. That's my understanding. So that's a big sort of a bone to pick, that indeed writers are not getting paid for the value that their work generates.
So that
But you're not getting paid when your book sells in a secondhand bookstore.
No. And so what if your book sold as a screenplay? I mean, sold to a production company, and you would get
that briar patch. Sure. I mean, my first book was a movie.
Yeah.
We sold it to Hallmark. They paid up front. I had no input on the actual script, and the movie wasn't that good. But I have a writer friend, Peter Coyote, who I complained to about being cut out of the process and all this, that, the other, and I didn't like the movie. He said, Larry, shut the hell up. You cash the check. That part of the business is you sold them your story. It becomes their story then.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Peter Coyote, the actor?
Actor and voice actor, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't he in The Right Stuff?
No.
Okay, but anyway.
You recognize his voice for sure. In
Sure.
fact, Lee, the
Yeah.
Harry Ducharme character
Yeah.
was written for Peter Coyote.
Oh, okay.
And he has read my books, and we're casual friends, but I'm close. But I keep saying, Peter, I'm trying to get this thing done into a movie because this is the role for you. And a good man. Actually, physically, at one time, he would have been perfectly visual with that.
Larry, let me go off on a separate tangent since we have access to you. Your comments on what's going on in America right now with respect to censorship, book banning. Don't parents have a right to, until they're 18 years old, protect their children from what they read?
Absolutely. They don't have the right to protect other children from what they read.
Or protect other adults from what they read.
You know, we just discovered this week in Iowa. Now, Florida gets all the headlines, but evidently y'all have gone crazy down there. Crazy town.
Not us.
Hey, whoa, 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 I'm in Oregon.
Well, I just discovered that in Iowa, the legislature passed a law last year. And there's some school districts, they have hundreds of books that have been taken off the shelves.
Hundreds.
Hundreds. And
Hundreds of titles? You mean hundreds of titles have been taken off of multiple shelves?
there was a children's book called Mayor Pete, based on Pete Buttigieg and his.
I've seen it. I have seen it.
Yeah.
And it's considered obscene by these new state standards, so they took it off the shelf. That's the weirdness. I mean, you get these people who, we all grew up with a natural scold, busybody. I know what's best for you, and it offends me. It goes back to, Inherit the Wind and the Scopes trial,
Yeah.
this sort of mentality that we're morally superior to you, and now you're picking on us by pushing all this agenda, and we're going to push back and just make it where your books can't be. We're able to have a law that if books
Oops.
are selling a book to a minor that the parent finds obscene.
Well, I know, when my husband was teaching high school English, the process was that if a parent objected to a book that was assigned, they could ask that child not read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And the child would be assigned another book to read and would discuss it with the teacher or whatever. But that parent's decision did not affect the teacher's ability to assign the book or for the other children or the other students to discuss it. And that makes sense. That gives a parent control over what they think their child should read, but doesn't affect.
These are also easy cop-outs for those kinds of parents. So, like, I don't want to work hard enough to actually know what my child is reading. I just want ban it for everybody, so I don't have to worry about it. Flamingo, my first novel, was on the banned book list in Illinois at one time.
Oh,
For
goodness.
what reason?
Sex on the Beach.
Oh, gosh.
I remember that.
That was terrible. Just awful.
It was.
I just put the book down. Yeah.
I know you did, and then
Yes.
you picked it up again.
Picked it up again, but put it down there for a minute. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it also was a textbook at hundreds of other high schools at one time because they loved the coming of age story
Yeah.
and the fact that the book has no profanity at all. I don't know if you remember that. There's not a hell or a damn in there anywhere. And the sex was, I managed to have sex without body parts. But evidently the scene was so sort of imaginatively graphic.
It was good writing, is what it was.
That's what it was.
It was.
Yeah.
It was award-winning, right?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorites of your books is The Education of Nancy Adams.
Oh yeah.
Partly because the small town high school is a setting that I was familiar with, and that I could practically put a name to so many of those students. These were kids I knew, or kids that my husband taught, and there were teachers that I could put a name to. And I really, really enjoyed that book. I enjoyed this one too. But The Education of Nancy Adams is a book that I highly read, particularly to educators. There you go.
Oh, it's one of my favorite books. There, a lot of it's based on my home high school experience.
Yeah.
50 years later, but also it's directly related to the high schools in St. Augustine, Florida.
Ah,
Those two high schools in the book are modeled after St. Augustine High and I think it's called Nice High School. it hit a lot of people in just the right way, but that sort of divide between the upscale school and the inner city school, right out of my own ranks.
Yeah, and that's true in almost every town in the country. You know, that kind of divide.
All right, Lee, I'm going to give you the honor of the last question for Larry before we head on out.
Oh gosh,
Pressure.
that is a lot of pressure. Okay, what's coming next?
Oh,
Ah.
I am so burned out. Here's the dirty little secret about this book. We have given away more copies than we have sold.
Oh,
I got one national review on a web magazine. A tremendous. I don't know if you ever saw it or not. I'll send it to you. Not great review. The reviewer got the book and the story and nailed it. Right. 0. Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Library Journal, nobody else. In other words, your audience here, my Facebook friends, are basically the only people in the known universe who know about this book.
well, then we need to tell them how they can get this book.
Well, they can contact me, or they can go to my publisher, Ice Cube Press, which
Right.
is just on the web, Ice Cube Press. And it's, but to your question, so, I don't want to go into too many details here, but we've got some health issues in my family that are sort of taking, not mine, but in my family, who are sort of occupying most of my energy for the foreseeable future. I've got a book, I've rewritten one of my earlier books that I'm going to privately publish. And it's the Harry Descharnes book.
Mhm.
And because I want to bring in and give them a little bit more context. But it's about local politics. But as far as a new book, my publisher is, Lord love him, a very patient man. He hadn't made a profit yet, also. So I don't think he's going to be sorry to see me sort of self-publish my next book.
Well, another question might be in along that same lines is, are books that don't make a profit worth publishing? And I certainly think they are. I mean, I think that whether or not Ice Cube Press has made any money off of your books, I like your books and I've enjoyed them a great deal, and I think they should have been published.
Well, it's one of these questions I have with myself and other writers, which is, how do you define success as a writer?
Yeah.
My first book was a bestseller. I got tons of money off of it. I got a movie made out of it, foreign editions, everything. And everything from that point has gone down. Every book sells a little less than the previous book. So at what point does your career go from successful to not successful? Unfortunately, publishing is one of those businesses, but unfortunately, it's the nature of the business. You've got to spend money to publish a book.
Mm-hmm.
The writer can do it on his own, self-publish if he wants to, sell it, all that. But for a business model, I sympathize with my publisher, because this man works overtime and has been very supportive of me. But,
Well, my opinion is, if you can pick up a book and hold it in a mirror, then you were successful, even if that's the only copy ever printed.
I think that's a fair definition of success, which is one to be published. I mean, we qualify this. I don't want to offend anybody, but to be published not by yourself.
Right.
And with that, Larry Baker, author of the great new novel, Harry and Sue, filled with American icons. Always a pleasure to have you on and talk about your books and the book ecosphere. Lynn?
And
Lee?
And I do, go back and read all of Larry's books. And I think probably the writing has improved over the years. So it's not, it's the latest one should be the best seller.
It should.
That's what I think.
I'm sorry, Lee. I look at the center of the screen. I see your Lee Linn. All I see is. I'm sorry. Happens every week.
Oh,
All right,
goodness.
everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Another episode of the Rare Book Cafe, the coffee break edition. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. And every week you can find us right here.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Lee.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.